Hey, Young Turks, I'm Nomi Konst. Thanks for tuning in to TYT Politics. We have a great interview lined up about a race that is getting a lot of national attention. It is the race to replace former Representative Javier Becerra in California. It is CD, Congressional District 34 in Southern California, and we're lucky to have one of the candidates who's been getting a lot of attention, Wendy Carrillo. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Wendy, you have an incredible story. I've been reading about you and learning about you for the past few months as this race has been heating up. And I think, your story is what embodies the American spirit, especially at a time when there's so much animosity and hate rhetoric being thrown by the right about immigrants and exactly what our country was built on. So, tell us a little bit about how did you come to America?
Sure. Well, I was born in El Salvador during the Civil War there, and it was a very violent and chaotic time. And my mother, in her early 20s, made a very courageous decision to come to the United States and seek refuge. And so she did, and she started working. And a few years later, she sent for me, my grandmother, and my aunt, so that we can actually have a chance at life. And what I did not know at the time was that between the ages of 5 and 13, at 5 when I arrived to the US, I was undocumented, like thousands of children that came to the United States during that time fleeing Central America and fleeing El Salvador because of the war. And like many children today that are unaccompanied minors that are leaving because that violence has continued. And so, this is where I grew up. The congressional district is where I grew up, and it's an incredibly diverse community. And so I think what's most interesting about my story is that it's not unique in any way, but there has never been a person like me that's run for Congress, especially because of this time in our nation's history. I mean, we have a president that campaigned on the backs of Mexicans and immigrants and undocumented people and the Black community and LGBTQ folks and every minority that you can possibly think of that he stepped on while he campaigned is now feeling threatened and feeling like they need to go back into the shadows because we have an administration that cares very little about diversity and minority groups in this country.
Your background's not in politics. Your background is in media, and you've been vocal. You've been out there on the issues, obviously reporting on these issues. Why the transition? Why now? What inspired you? What was that moment where you said, I've got to run?
Yeah, so a couple of things. So I've worked in the intersection of media and politics for a long time, and I found myself at Standing Rock in the during October through December, and during the time in which Trump was elected, and also during the time in which my congressman, Javier Becerra, decided to step down. And I was leaving Standing Rock, and I kept asking myself, what can I do to serve? What can I do to change the direction of this country? I went to Standing Rock as a journalist, and I left a water protector. And what I saw there were incredible acts of courage and resistance and resiliency. And I was invited to participate in Native American ceremony and prayer. But I also saw egregious acts of severe human rights violations, an increase of a militarized police state, the idea that we can put profits over people and an oil pipeline underneath a natural water resource that not only is the water resource for the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation, but for millions of Americans that depend on the Missouri River for clean water. And this idea, this thing, the violence, seeing people, grandmothers, elders, women, young people, be water cannoned at 14-degree weather, be hit by rubber bullets. I myself was caught in one of the worst nights of violence and was tear gassed. And I had a flash grenade explode just a few feet from me and hit the side of my face. And that was only some of the minor things that happened. There was a young woman who nearly lost her arm, another young woman who nearly lost her eye. And so, this isn't happening anywhere around the world. It's happening in North Dakota in the United States. And the fact that people are oblivious or don't know or don't care about the issues there or tribal sovereignty for that matter, I was livid. And I felt that after that night, I've said it before, like I went to my little tent and I felt like I baked, Nomiki, because the following morning I woke up a completely different person.
Wow.
I felt fearless and unafraid, and I felt like I needed to do something. And I kept asking, where is Congress? Where is Obama? Why is this happening? And next thing you know, it was as if my questions were answered because the representative of my district was stepping down. And I thought, wow, if Congress isn't coming here, then I guess I'm going there because
Wow.
I'm running. And it's time that I stop waiting around for somebody else to show up. As an immigrant, as a formerly undocumented person, as an unrecognized refugee living this experience in this moment in our nation's history, then when we talk about resistance, like this is what it looks like. It means that you stop waiting around. It means that you pull up your sleeves and you decide to do something about it. And so I did. And it's been a crazy adventure since. I've never run for office. It's incredibly hard. It's challenging. It's set up in a way that people like me, people from the community that don't have deep pockets or deep donors, can actually have a very little chance of doing it because the system is not set up so that we are able to participate in it. And people say, well, you've no experience, what are you going to do? And it's like, this isn't about legislation or policy. This is about the heart and soul of this country. And I'm not ignorant to the issues. I've been covering them. I've been a human rights journalist. I've been a political journalist. So now more than ever is our moment to step up. And even so, you would appreciate this. Like, this is a moment in which journalists are being kicked out of the White House briefings because they're not writing in favorably of the administration.
Absolutely.
So, what do we do without a free press? We are no longer a free country. And so we need to hold this administration to the fire and really do something about it.
I find this interesting. So I actually, before I was a journalist, we have reverse records. It's hysterical. I ran for Congress when I was 28. And, that was 5 years ago, and it was obviously before the political the major resistance and the political revolution. But when I was looking at Congress, I was like, the average age is 68, and the majority is white, and we're actually not making any major moves in terms of gender equity or representation. And the representation does not look like America. I just read a study yesterday saying that the majority of Congress overwhelmingly is white and Christian. But when you look at our country, obviously our country does not look like that, and that's not what our country was built off of. So when you hear politicians and you hear the party leaders say things like, you don't have experience, it's like, well, yes, but if you only go with the people that have experience, you're just going to get the same old, and we're not necessarily going to be solving those problems. So it's this status quo cycle. And that's what I find really fascinating about this race, is that you have a lot of young people running in this district, some of whom are elected, some of whom have political organizing experience or staffing experience. But everybody's been engaged and, in tune with the issues and has been trying to organize, the grassroots. And traditionally, as you and I both know, and I think most of our audience knows, congressional races are about dialing for dollars and going to meet with very wealthy people. So how do you balance that? How do you, it's still, California is an incredibly expensive market for Congress. You have, the media market's very expensive. The race is expensive. So how do you balance needing to raise a lot of money with organizing the grassroots in a race like this?
Yeah. This is what's interesting about this race, because normally it takes you about a year and a half to really mount a congressional campaign. You know this. This is a sprint. This was in December. Election is April 4th. We don't have a lot of time. Nope. And so what we've been able to do in this short amount of time has been incredible. My campaign for Congress has brought out this national conversation of what does it truly mean to have political parity. We talk about women, we talk about immigrants, we talk about undocumented communities, we talk about refugees. People are at the airport protesting because of the Muslim ban that is terrible. But what does it look like when you actually have somebody that fits all of those descriptions actually run for Congress and actually have be viable to be able to run? That is what my campaign is about. And I think because of that, we've garnered incredible grassroots support. And the fact that I'm from this community, this is where I grew up, where I live, where my parents live, where I have roots, where I bought a home, where I've gone to school. So I'm not starting from scratch. This is my community, and there is no one that can tell me what my community needs or what we fear or what we struggle with, because I live it every single day. And so I think that's one of the key differences. But the reality is that raising money, it's incredibly hard. I have a lot of really grassroots support. We're chasing $27 donations, which is very popular. We started a campaign called the 34 for 34 so that people can, feel like just a little bit more, but also like educate them on the district number. And I don't have a lot of people that have maxed out for me, but I do have some.
Maxed
And
out
I'm
donations,
grateful.
you mean?
Maxed out donations is at 2,700. You add two
Right.
zeros to the $27. And it's been hard. Every day I have to be on the phones calling everybody and their mama, everybody I've ever met in my entire life, old boyfriends that I dated way back in 2001 that I have on my phone for some reason, and telling them, hey, that was a good, thanks for the margarita at that point, but now I'm running for Congress, so can you help me out? So, it's hard. Dialing for dollars is hard. And so you balance your time by making sure that you go to community events, that people know what you're about, that you leverage social media and platforms and media to be unafraid and tell your story. I've never told my story in this way before. In fact, it's been very few people that actually know my origin story, that actually it's trauma. Every day that I tell my story, I'm telling a story about what happened to me and my family when we lost everything in a civil war in a different country, and having to start from scratch, new, with nothing, in a new country, not knowing the language, not, starting started from the bottom, now we're here. So it's, but it's hard. And I think for me, what's been the most heartwarming about it is the incredible support. But because of that, we've also garnered the attention of the far right, of the former gun wizard.
That was my next question. You have, because of your story, this unbelievable story, and this moment in time when that story is so powerful, the far right has come out and attacked you. David Duke, who how he was once an elected official blows my mind. But David Duke went after you on Twitter. How did that start? What was the origins of it?
We released our first ad, which is called Unapologetic. And I share a portion of my story, and I share the idea that people from all walks of life, whether you're immigrant, undocumented or not, LGBT, woman, all these things, we all deserve a chance at the American dream. And this country was here for me and my family when we needed it, and now I want to be there for it in a whole new way. And because of this, because I'm unapologetic, because I tell my story in a way that's empowering, this is not victimhood. I own my story and I share it because I'm passionate about it, and I believe that there are millions of Americans that will feel empowered by it, and we have an opportunity to turn this country to one of opportunity, not one of fear and oppression. So somehow it got on his radar. And he tweeted about it and said that I played a person of color masterfully, like if I'm able to remove my person of colorness off and on when I choose to. This is who I am. And so I responded, and I said, you know what? Yes, I am 100% unapologetic, and what? Right? And so then it just ensued into something else, and garnered the attacks of the far right. And I don't take comments from the former Grand Wizard of the KKK lightly. We've had to have conversations with our team about safety, about security, about ensuring that we feel safe. And I've had to have moments where I'm posting a photo on social media and I'm like, should I
tag your location?
Tag my location?
Don't.
Yeah,
I can tell you that.
and I'm just like, oh, like this is real. So people can talk about the resistance. People can talk about, I'm going to go fight Trump and I'm going to do this. And like, we are already doing it. Right. We are not waiting to get to Congress. We are doing it literally every single day. We are fighting an administration. We're fighting a Republican Party. We're fighting a weak Democratic Party that sometimes doesn't stand up for what we believe in. And now we're fighting the alt-right.
Right.
So if you want to join the resistance, like, this is it. It's the 34th. It's my campaign. You can join and like help me out, because it's already happening.
Now, Wendy, you were a journalist during the presidential campaign. You obviously went to Standing Rock, spent quite a bit of time there, and you've been around the progressive movement quite a bit. What did you learn out of the campaign?
So I was a journalist during the presidential campaign, and I was like a quiet supporter of Bernie Sanders because I couldn't necessarily just be posting everything about him. But what we did do was create a show around his platforms during a time in which the media was not taking him seriously, called My Peoples. And we had a lot of folks come in and talk about the progressive values that the senator had. And then, once I could, then I was very vocal, which is why I have the support of a lot of people like Lucy Flores, that's supporting my campaign for Congress, who was a surrogate of his.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned, what I think the key takeaway of the entire campaign is that Bernie himself said, I am not a messiah. Like, this is not a movement about me. This is a movement about people. And people in their own communities need to take ownership of the political process and run. Unafraid, unapologetic, run on a progressive platform and ensure that communities feel connected to what's going on locally and nationally. And for me, that's incredibly inspiring because we for so long, our party for so long has been a little bit of, left of center in order to be able to work across the aisle, but clearly that hasn't worked. And so what we need now are just folks that are incredibly progressive, unapologetic, bold, unafraid, and are really in it because they believe that we can be a country of opportunity, not a country of opportunity for just a few. We can be a country of what can be and what should be, not one of fear and oppression, which is what we're seeing now. And so, this election is incredibly important. It is one of the first across the country. And who Los Angeles sends gets to be a representative of the resistance. It is about ensuring that our communities feel safe and that we fight for a progressive agenda moving forward. Come 2018, come, everything that's coming our way with the changes that are happening within the Democratic Party, and that we encourage other young people to run because they know their community and because they care about the issues, not because, for whatever X reason, or for a political platform or because they want to be career politicians. There is a difference between being a politician and being a public servant. And, I believe that I am a public servant. I've been listening to the people for the past 15 years of my professional career. I want to take the voices of my community and the millions of Americans that believe that we can make a difference into the halls of Congress. And it starts here.
So the election's on April 4th. And California has a unique electoral system, so we'll get to that in a second. But what happens? I mean, if you get elected, what are the first bills that you would present when you enter Congress?
So there are 23 people that are running for this race. It is a crowded race. I was the first woman, third candidate to announce, despite establishment candidates have already putting their name in the hat. And what I thought would happen, and that is the same musical chairs, the same elected officials that always want to vie up for the next seat. And I thought, nope, it's not happening, not anymore. And so April 4th will determine the top two. And then there will be a runoff in June. And I think aside from policy and legislation and supporting bills, what this is about protecting the very things that we have fought for the past 8 years and even before then. The idea that in 2017 we are talking about Roe versus Wade,
right?
Turning time, going back in time, and the fact that we also have an education secretary that is dismantling public education, and that we are increasing our police presence, or that we are increasing and targeting undocumented communities that feel unsafe in this country and that play a vital role in the thread of American society. And so I don't believe that going in as a junior congressional member is about passing any kind of bills or, putting my name on legislation. I think it's going to be about the very basic protection and putting a clear line in the sand about where we are, who we are, what we need to protect, and fighting an administration that is literally threatening millions of people every day.
Mm-hmm. Going into Congress, I interviewed Representative Ro Khanna, who was just elected in November a few days ago in Washington, and we talked about his experience walking into Congress and feeling like these people just didn't understand what's happening out in the streets. He said there's a huge cultural divide, and he's from Silicon Valley and he's younger, but even somebody who's been in politics and active in politics, he's run several times, he was shocked by how his fellow Democratic congresswomen and men didn't understand that people were hurting and needed immediate response. So is Congress the best solution at this point for change? It's a real question I ask congressional candidates all the time.
Yeah, no, it is. I think that we need more vocal, unapologetic voices, loud, bold, unafraid. young people to be innovative and that actually have their ear to the ground and a pulse to their community without having to take a poll, without having to be lobbied, without having, you get caught in the beltway in DC. And it's happened over and over. And the fact that you're constantly having to fundraise and raise money for your reelection doesn't allow you to actually focus on the issues, or you get sidetracked and you lose touch with the realities of what's happening on the ground. The fact that members of Congress have to be lobbied to stop somebody like Jeff Sessions' nomination is horrific. The fact that this is happening in our own party, the fact that the Democrats are currently right now trying to negotiate the Supreme Court nominee for another one that's going to be less crazy the next time around. I mean, I'm livid. It's I have no words, but that is why we need a new generation of leaders to go in. And so with this election, this is one of the first after this administration, we get to set the tone for the 2018 midterms and really taking back Congress, but actually electing people that are progressive and that have knowledge of their communities and what the issues are, whether it's saving the Affordable Care Act, which we just saw, protecting women's rights, immigration, education, jobs, the economy. Like, these are all things that are incredibly important and that we need champions of, not people that just simply talk the talk but refuse to walk the walk.
Wendy, best of luck. You've got a little over a week.
Yeah. 10 days.
10 days. So if everybody who is interested can go to, is it votewendycarrillo.com?
Yes. So you don't need to live in the district to help me out. If we truly want a grassroots campaign, then it actually, we need your help, and we need your help in fundraising. So every dollar makes a huge difference for our campaign. My special interests are the single mom with 2 kids who gave me $100 and said, this is all I have, but I know that you are going to be a champion for myself and my family once you get to Congress. That is who's giving me money. But we need to show up. That is the only way that we're going to get money out of politics, and really start having a conversation about the impact that, money actually does, how it impacts elections across this country. So you can go to votewendycarrillo.com, make a donation. You can also sign up to Phone Bank, and we can talk to as many voters as possible. You don't need to live in the district to help out. And just really quickly, if you live in LA, the district at the top is Eagle Rock, Highland Park, Mount Washington, Glassell, Cypress, the East Side communities of Boyle Heights, Lincoln Heights, El Sereno, City Terrace, downtown LA, Chinatown, Koreatown, Pico Union, Westlake. It is one of the most multicultural, multi-ethnic communities in the entire country. And if I'm privileged to be elected, I'd be the first formerly undocumented woman in Congress and the first Salvadorian American elected in the nation's history. So it's historic in all kinds of ways. So thank you.
And a millennial.
And a millennial.
And a millennial. All right. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you so
I really
much.
appreciate it.